My name is Jonathan, and I've been working at Abbey Road for 20 years. It's a great privilege to work there. It's a facility with a great history. In its essence, what Abbey Road provides are two particularly great rooms for recording music, particularly with large ensembles or orchestras or large groups of musicians. We have Studio One, which was the first custom-built studio in the world, which was built in 1931. And then we have Studio 2, which was originally built for variety, for big band acts in the early 30s, and is now used as, and then became known for pop music when the pop music started to be a big industry in the early 50s. And then it became very well known for acts like the Beatles, who took over the studios during the 60s and did some wonderful work. And the facility has just grown through the age, and now in today's world we provide services for all manner of things that are needed in the modern music industry. We have a great heritage of analog equipment, which we still use, particularly old bits of outboard gear which were developed by EMI. Could be compressors and EQ units. But what we like to do is retain the best of the old, but obviously integrate that with digital technology and all the things we need nowadays to work with computers. The Composers Lab seems to be a great opportunity for young composers to work with professionals like Ilan in this great facility, and to get a further insight into how you write music and sculpt it for a particular picture. I've joined today. We've come over with a couple of colleagues from Abbey Road, where we're doing two things. One is just to have an overview and look at various bits of the business in Bollywood and in the music industry, in particular in Mumbai. And today I'll probably be helping out near the end of the day, where my role as an engineer at Abbey Road is to help the composer record the music and to mix the music to picture for the final release of the product. And today what we will be doing is the composers will get to a stage where they've worked the music material, and then they'll play what they've composed, and then myself, Shantari, and a few whoever's in the control room can help offer some suggestions as to how the sounds that they're using for the music can be smoothed out or shaped to make their music even work as well as it can do to the picture. Well, at the moment, I actually haven't heard any music, so what I'll be looking forward to hearing is what they've written and what sounds they've used, what instruments they've employed, and how they've put those together in their initial mix. And then we'll see if there are any suggestions we can do to help make the music more exciting, or more make the message of the music more clear for the final presentation. So when the composers play their tracks, the things we look for are clarity, to make sure the melody's coming through, the patterns are clear, that any rhythmic elements are punchy where they need to be punchy, are not muddled in reverb or whatever they're using. And simply just making sure that the music is clear and presented as well as it can be. What's interesting with the industry is that there are certain basics which actually haven't changed. So when you have musicians playing together in the same room, the principle of making music, but actually performing music, hasn't changed at all, and that industry is exactly the same nowadays as it always has been. What's changed with computers is the ability to edit the music without destroying it. Because in the past, if you wanted to make an edit, you have to do that on a tape, and that would mean you would be then destroying that tape and then editing the bits of music you wanted to do and put it back together. When when computers became involved in the process, suddenly you can make an edit without destroying the actual original material, and that was actually a big leap for people to be able to manipulate and change the sounds and actually to explore different ideas. And I think the computers now have made an extraordinary difference to the way people create music. I think there are many more people involved in music who maybe wouldn't have been involved in music in the past, when you were specifically just writing for orchestras and for choirs or people performing the music. Whereas nowadays, people can work with all manner of different sounds, and the computers allow you to manipulate those things. So the studios, really, what we're doing is we help composers still work with a traditional way of recording, which are large ensembles, but then you create enough flexibility that you can then go into the mix room and take the music that has been recorded and then work those ideas and work with the colours of sound and the different approaches that you want to do for the particular project, and shape that to a level of detail that wasn't possible to do in the past. And that's what makes the technology nowadays incredibly exciting and incredibly open to many more people. Well, we really encourage people to play music, because I think one of the most exciting bits of music making is when someone writes a tune and it's performed by somebody, or it's sung by somebody. And I think I grew up very much in the tradition of you would choose. We have an incredibly great selection of microphones and old vintage valve colours and lots of toys we can play with. And so we grew up with the tradition where you would get a, for example, a guitarist is going to play a tune. First of all, you want to make sure the guitarist has a wonderful sounding guitar itself, because that's where the sound comes from. Whatever microphone you could put in front of it, the essence of the sound is the guitar itself. And then you choose a nice mic that would be appropriate for the job, and then make sure the mic's in the right position. If it's not working, don't reach for your EQ first. Get the microphone, move it a bit, try and find the sound from the point of source and get that sounding good. And then once that's been recorded really well, and you have a signal that you're happy with, and then you can start to explore what extra things you want to do with that sound. Whether you want to just compress it a little, make it a bit more even in level, or maybe brighten it a fraction, depending on what you want to do. So we've grown up in this really lovely world where we want players to perform the music, and we want to record it really well, and then we integrate that with the synthetic sounds, which are incredible nowadays, and there's all manner of combinations, and there sometimes the synthetic sounds can be amplified, and we can put those back into the studio, and then we can amplify those and create nice analog sounds from that, or a variety of reverbs that we want to do. So it's really important that you keep an eye on where the essence of great music making comes from, and then nowadays the craft of it is applying that beauty to all the palette of sounds that you can throw in the pot. It's one of our big growth areas have been third-party passion-led projects, and actually music is passion-driven, and that's the beauty of it. And no matter how difficult the marketplace can be, how hard it can be to sell CDs or monetize music making, somehow the people who make music are driven to create and to write and to play, and that's always going to be how the music industry works and functions. And we found that actually music-only projects is still incredibly healthy. People will find their own way. I did a project recently with it was almost like a klezmer jazz band who had found £70,000 through Kickstarter, and did a whole album for 4 days with the London Symphony Orchestra. And they find their support. They find through their fans, they have this energy and this drive to still make music, and they have no label. They don't know what they're going to do with it afterwards, but they but they know if they make it well and they make it great and they're doing their music properly, that actually it'll find its place and they'll be making something that they'll be proud of to listen to for many, many years. So sometimes imagination can be slightly lacking in the corporate forces of music making, but actually the passion from the ground will always drive invention and drive interesting music. And actually we don't see any failing in that, and we really see a growth in that side of music making. Even from mono, the principles have never changed in the way we hear music. A beautiful mono balance can be as involving as the most wonderful Atmos with 64 speakers around you and 17 speakers on the roof and bass all around you. So I find it's still down to the content itself, which whether it works, whether it sounds great. I don't think there's a massive problem listening from mono to 5.1 or to stereo, as long as the work's done well and is clear and is bold. What is interesting is the development of each stage. People will stretch it, so the early stereo recordings can sound really wacky today because you'll have vocals on the left and stuff on the right, and then slowly as stereo evolved, people just started to merge the image and make sure it was more solid and more interesting for everybody. And then early 5.1, when we had discrete digital channels, then some of these people started throwing things in very, very wide cinemascope, stuff flying around your heads unnecessarily sometimes. But then again, it calmed down, and then people started to use it properly and make an image that was just right for the purpose. So really, it doesn't matter what you've got, how many speakers. 7.1 was always a difficult one for people to get their heads around, and now we're entering a world of Atmos or 3D Aura. There's a variety of new approaches to cinema sound, in particular, to fly information over your head, literally over your head and to the back of the room. But again, it really doesn't matter as long as it's done well and with craft and purpose. Then it's always going to be interesting. So a wonderful Atmos mix is going to be as involving as a wonderful mono mix. I read about Abbey Road when I was like 12, and I found the place was always an aspirational place to be involved in. And I think a lot of composers and musicians, I think, just enjoy the fact that they've been welcomed to or had the opportunity to make music there. But I don't know whether people find it as overwhelming. I think it's still the ambition of the project and what they're doing is probably more overwhelming than maybe actually being at the facility itself. I think people. You can be in Studio 2 and feel a great. It just feels good, It still smells like the '60s in there, but I think what composers are after really is what the acoustic brings and what the microphones themselves bring, and I think it's more of a. I find more people are actually excited to be there and interested about being there than they are overwhelmed by a sense of whatever else has happened there, because. That happens then, and this is now, and music should be constantly moving forward. And I think the studios are always pushing to move forward and make sure that we're relevant to today's market. But I think any musician in there is more bothered about what they're actually doing on the day than whether their guitar playing is as good as George Harrison's. Actually, it was fascinating. When I first joined the studios, I was so scared for the first 6 months that I would wipe anything. The thing actually wouldn't record, and I think, and in fact, we still have those sense of. I think any project, you still need that adrenaline that you want to make it better. It wants to be good, but certainly the first 3 or 4 months, I was always shaking, just pressing the buttons and running the machines, and it was an extraordinarily great time because we were still running 35mm. Film for the projectors, and we were syncing up 2 or 3 analog machines and the video machine and all this sort of stuff. So it was an exciting time, but yeah, I was really nervous.